Good everyone and welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial, as you can see, we will be doing a very simple water ripple. Stay tuned, and we will be also covering how to do a ripple on water that is not level. This is just the simple part. So let's get to it. Now all we're going to do is we're going to use a simple plane. This is going to represent our water, and this is our object in the water. And of course we need our ripples. So what you need to do is you just need to stick Suzanne inside the water. Just give it a quick material. Let's call this water. Let's choose one of these default monkey toon materials and make it blue for the water. Rename it. I'm not going to add specularity in this case. I'm just going to run through this because this is really not super necessary. You already know how to set up toon materials. If you've watched my tutorials before, you know exactly how I set it up. Just in case, there you go. And of course here, and options, full oversampling, pass index, and shadow. Okay, fabulous. Now what we need is a circle. What I prefer to do is to actually model this out. So what you do is you just use the default and you extrude it. Give it quite a size, not too big, not too small. Add some loop cuts. Try to get them as square as possible. Add an extra in the middle. Scale it down using a smooth, sharp fall off. Sorry. Sometimes it goes a little slow for my mouth. Not a good thing. Okay, go from the top using number pad 7. Select everything, press U, unwrap, project from view, tab out, and now you'll see that we've got this fan type shape. First things first, we need to set up our waves. So you get the wave modifier, and immediately you're going to see it only has a little point in the middle. This is because our offset is set to 0. If the offset is set to 0, the waves only start on the first frame, or the 0 frame. But if you press play, you can see that it starts blowing out. So what we need to do, set it quite a ways back until we're satisfied that it fills the frame. Then it will run as if it's been running for a while. That looks good. Let's make it smooth. And our waves are far too wide, so we need lots more narrowness. Let's just get that and see what that looks like. A little too narrow, way too fast, and way too little detail. So what you need to do is add a subdivision surface. The reason I don't add the subdivision surface inside the model right here is because I want to be able to take it away without having to remesh or decimate or anything like that. I'd rather be able to add than to have to take away. Okay, that looks great. I think we can add another level just so it's a little bit more smooth. Satisfied with that. Now let's take our outer edge, still with smooth, and pull it down so that we get this heel-like shape. Something like that. This gives us this fading ripple like that. I feel the height is a bit much, but I'm also going to shrink it down. Looks great. Okay, now we need to reduce the influence on the inside and make sure that we have maximum influence on the outside. This we do with a vertex group. So immediately I want you to go into weight painting, keep it from the top, hit Z, and let's add a new vertex group, and let's call this wave weight. Go back, select it, make sure you don't have it set to influence in edit mode, and make sure your weight's on top, on the top setting, which is 1, and start on the outside. Something like that, and reduce the strength. move closer to the inside. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit uneven, we're going to add even more unevenness to it. You don't want any influence in the middle though, so be warned. Just want it to be a slight green tint on the inside. Something like that. Okay. Now exit weight painting mode. And immediately you'll see that we get something like this. Awesome. Okay. Now move the waves under Suzanne. And we have to make sure that they're not as high as they are at the moment. So let's just play it again. That actually looks pretty good. Just need to shrink it down a bit. I'm just scaling it along the z-axis, just so it's a little bit flatter. You can use the height setting over here. I just prefer not to in this case. We want a greater level of narrowness so that we have a few more waves. And we just want to scale this out. Not scale it out. Sorry. I want to expand it like this. Okay. Just want to take this down again. Expand a little bit out. Okay, take it slightly up. Remember, this is very much getting the right feel for what you're working with. But I do want more waves, so I'm going to reduce the width and increase the narrowness. I want a few waves, not just one or two. Goodness, you think after a few runs this would be a lot faster. Let's add another level so we have a little bit more. Ah, see, that's more what I'm looking for. Just expand it a bit and shrink this in a bit. Okay, that looks wonderful. Now what we need to do is add a texture so that we have a little bit of a breakup around the edges. So let's just call this breakup foam. Keep it on local coordinates. Use a cloud texture. You can set it on about 1, possibly 2. It just depends on the kind of breakage that you want in the waves. Give it a little bit more height. I feel like I'm not getting quite the result I'm looking for. Just going to pull this down a bit. See what we get. That's closer to it. There we go. Now we have our monkey in the water. Awesome. Let's give it a quick material. Let's use the one that's not used, and let's call this foam toon. I don't use specularity on toon materials most of the time. And in fact, I've noticed in some shows that the foam can be shadeless. Doesn't have to be, but it can be. So you can choose to go for this or this. Absolutely your choice. I prefer this. You can even go for something in the middle by adding a little bit of emission to it by like 0.5. It's absolutely up to you. I prefer shadeless, so... Okie dokie, and that is it. Let's let it run a little bit. Okay, that's good. Let's give our monkey a different color just so that it stands out a bit more. Make it an orange. Again, reducing its specularity. Giving it a more of a matte finish. Parent it to the monkey, but only on the z-axis, so we're going to use a constraint. Copy location, select the monkey, and only x and y, so that when you move Suzanne, you can do this. Now generally this is not very accurate for water, so what you can do is you can add a slow parent to it, which is quite simple. All you need to do is let me just go back to solid, is Shift S, cursor to selected, add a cube or whatever object you prefer. I just prefer a cube, so I'm going to be adding one using wire, only wire, and I don't want it to be render visible. Parent that to the waves. And go into relation extras on the cube, not the waves. Slow parent, I set it to about 5. Add extra objects. And add a hook modifier. Let me just get the hook modifier. Select the cube. Now at the moment we don't have a vertex group added for it, so I'm going to be adding a manual one because I only want the exterior to be pulled. So let's call this one slow parent. And go into weight painting for it, above, and like I said, only the outside. So weight painting, you can go a little bit on the inside, it's not an issue, as long as the whole thing doesn't pull out from under Suzanne. That's the main issue. We just want some flexing of the ripples as she moves. So I think something like that ought to do it. It's good if it's nice and uneven. Okay, going back there, select wave weight. Not wave weight, slow parent. See the scale is fine. This one scale is wrong, so you just need to apply rotation and scale. And reduce the wave height by a lot. Okay, let's just check the wave weight. Let's quickly adjust it. Give it a little bit more height so that we have some separation in the waves. A little bit more narrow, reducing the speed. A little bit more. See, like I said earlier, you just have to adjust this. Okay, adding more height to it. Don't want it to be too high. Okay, now let's just bring up the center part. So we have a more consistent look on Suzanne. That is absolutely fantastic. All we need to do is just adjust our texture because it's a little bit big. So I'm going to go for 0.5. 0.5 is a little much. Let's go 0.75 instead. There we go, that's better. I do want to adjust the height a bit. That is great. Now, if you take your Suzanne, look at that. See, now she cooperates with her wave deformations. Oh yeah. Now you can take this further by adding the same ripples to her ears, which is what I'm going to be showing you quickly. I want to go for something like that. Rotate it again and slide it in under the ears. Just want to get the waves. I don't want to... Why isn't it moving? Oh, that's why. It's because I've added a constraint. So I just need to tick offset. And shrink it down. Bring it slightly up. And let's quickly play that and see what it looks like. Gonna have to add some height to it and take it down further. Something like that. And let's do that on the other side as well. Duplicate, rotate Z. Nice and under the ear. About there. Rotate it as well. Just want to get it similar to the other one. There we go, something like that. And of course, these you already have constrained because we only adjusted the offset. So if you now take your monkey, all of the waves are offset. Just like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing a very quick animation with this. And that's pretty much it. Okay, now the only thing that I did change to be able to make this animation work was instead of using constraints to keep the waves to the ears, I removed the constraint and parented the waves around the ears to the ears. So unfortunately, if you do take it underwater or whatever, it will go underwater, but I wanted it to be there so that I can turn it. So if you do sit with a situation like this, you can try Vertex Parenting and then using constraints for that or something along those lines. But in this case, I'm sticking with this. Now, I know that I covered a similar method for water ripples and wakes in the boat wake and foam and the ship wake and foam tutorials, but like I said, this is for very simple type scenes, and the next one is going to be for static objects in moving water, like the ocean modifier. This is an additional animation I made while working on the simple water ripple tutorial. In this one, I just used the weight painting for the wave modifier. So just ignore that because that's not the focus of this one. The focus of this one is the disappearing. Look at that, sinking away. Now, the only way to do this sort of thing is to use shape keys or to drag it below the surface. If you drag it below the surface, it doesn't have that ripple out and vanish effect that you see there. The way to do that is with shape keys. So I want to show you what happens with the mesh in shape keys when you do that. I want to switch to solid view and I want to go to the bottom. Okay. Now if you look at what happens, see how it draws from the center? Look at that. It draws from the center and it goes below the surface. It's literally just below the surface. You can see there. Look at that. I made it extraordinarily sensitive, the shape key, so that in whatever circumstance it would be able to pull down far enough. So this is what the original shape key looks like. Going way, way down. It looks almost like a rocket. Anyway, so that's the focus was to draw it down in the center first, and then go from there. But the problem is because everything pulls down below the surface, the outside also pulls down quite significantly. But you still get an uneven, almost ripple out kind of effect. So that's very cool. So that's just an additional tip if you wanted to sink something down. The extra ones that were on the ears were simply just animated to sink down right after the ears go down. So look at that. Simple as that. Nothing fancy, just does the trick. And welcome to the second part. In this part, we will be talking about how to create an uneven surface foam. Now, bear in mind that these techniques are specifically for solid water. I will be covering how to do it for transparent water. Usually, though, when you have these kinds of effects, the water is not transparent. I have seen episodes or shows where the water is transparent, like, for example, when somebody is standing in water, like, let's say Suzanne is standing in water, and you can see only the ripple effect around them. For that, if the water is flat, you can simply use the techniques I used in the boat wake and foam tutorial. I will put a link in the description with the time to show how to apply that. It's basically using a plane as your texture coordinates. You UV unwrap it after you rotate it like this, and you use a blend texture to make sure that everything below a certain point is transparent. That way you don't struggle with transparency for objects like that. There's a quick tip for you right there. So let's get to the exciting part, which is creating uneven surface ripples. So let's get rid of this original plane and add a new one. Unwrap it. I don't know if it's necessary for the ocean sim, but we'll do it anyway. Let's add an ocean modifier. Feel free to use your own settings. I'm just using a very simple setup. I want to increase the resolution, reduce the wind speed so I get smaller waves. I think something like that ought to do it. Let's just reduce the scale so that it's not so intense. Yeah, I like that. That looks great. Let's see, what else? Okay, now we need to add a circle. And just get a circle in here. Same thing we did just now. Create a nice size for it. It's always going to be, has to be scaled bigger than it's going to be. And create a face on the inside, scale it down. That's great. Place it nice and easy under our little Suzanne monkey. Just like that. That looks nice. Let's just create some material so we can see what we're working with. Let's call this one water. Make it a sea aqua kind of color. Also tune 1.28. Full on intensity, no specularity. Let's just get that full oversampling and receive. Get rid of that. And of course our foam. Let's use one of these monkey tune materials. Call it foam. Get rid of the specular value. And of course I'm going to be using shadeless. Now you know what, let's go a little bit fancier on this one. Let's keep the shading. Let's just check on the auto revise. Okay, it looked a little smooth to my taste. Okay, let's save it. There we go. Now that it is saved, we need to apply our rotation and scale, just in case. And we need to apply our wave modifier. Again, offset all the way back, hit smooth, and go for subdivision. Again, the reason I do this is so that I can adjust it later. And of course, weight painting. So go weight painting, vertex group, call this waves weight. Top side, C, weight painting. Again, outside, 100%. Reduce that. No, not reduce that. Reduce the strength. My mistake. Let's just add some screencast keys. Okay. In this one, you do want a little bit more influence on the inside. Not as much as you would consider, but you'll see why I say that in just a second. Just want to get this nice and strong. Okay, I'm happy with that. Switch back, select the weights, and go back to solid. That looks wonderful. And object mode. Again, outside needs to be taken down. No, not like that. Smooth. Sharp. I don't know why I keep calling it smooth. To me, it looks smoother. It's one of those things. Whatever. Okay, that looks great. Just need to adjust our waves because they're ridiculous. Let's get rid of the ocean for a moment. Let's call this ocean and hide it. Just so we can get our waves a little bit more coherent. Now, obviously, we want them a lot narrower. Let's take a little bit more narrow, something like that. Take the narrowness a bit more seriously, or, yeah, let's take it more seriously. Something like that, and reduce the speed a bit. We can always adjust these things later. It's not a matter of freaking out. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's bring our ocean back. And now for the fun part. We need to quickly animate our ocean. This is not the fun part. The fun part's after. My mistake. Okay, so let's say insert keyframe. Go here. Set it 9. Insert keyframe. Go into the graph editor. Channel, extrapolation, linear. Go back. So now if you press play, you can see the ocean moves. It's wonderful. Now, obviously, this does not look very convincing. And the reason it does not is because it does not conform. The reason it does not conform is because we haven't told it to conform just yet. And that we do using the shrink wrap modifier. Not that one. There's shrink wrap modifier. This one. Okay. So you need to select your ocean. Boom. Look at that. Absolutely horrendous. Now the reason why is because we don't have an offset. Now if you press play, look at that. Awesome. Now it's obviously way too big, so we just need to shrink it in. And let's play it again. I think our waves are a bit too wide. Let's see if we increase the weight a little bit. I think we also need to take it down. I think those edges are a little bit too obvious. Just going to leave it where it was. Okay, it has to be on the positive side. If it's on the negative side, we'll see the edge. So you have to keep it positive. Okay, let's give our wave some height. Where's the height? There's the height. Okay, speed needs to come down. Narrowness for sure. And speed also needs to come down a little bit more. Let's just shrink it down a little bit as well. Not like that, from the outside. Where's this? Okay. I'm going to drag this down a little bit more so that we have less of an influence. And overall, Shift Z it a little bit inside. Okay, let's look at that. That is wonderful. Now all we need is a little bit of an uneven texture. So that's going to be added by the texture. Let's call this one noise out. Don't remember what I called it in the previous one, which is ironic because I just recorded it. So let's set this to 1. Look at that. Yeah, that looks kind of cool. Let's reduce the speed. The speed is still a little bit too intense for me. I want to go for like 0.15 or something. See what that looks like. Yeah, that looks a little bit more realistic for something like this. And of course now you can use Vertex Parenting like from the waves over here. Let's pick a few from the inside. And let's parent our monkey to that. Great. Let's parent. We have to pick 3 points so that we get rotation as well. So let's take 3 here. Let's get rid of that. Pick that one, get rid of that one, and choose that one. Want to get it approximately correct. So make vertex parent. And now she should be moving a little bit too often. Slow parent, like I said, 2, and hit it. Let's just move her a little bit higher. She's a little bit too deep in the water. There we go. And there you have it. Interactive water ripples. Now obviously you can see there's some water still going on under the surface. The only way to get that gone is by using dynamic paint. Unless you're willing to keep your water opaque, which in most cases it would be for something as technical as this. But I do know that there are exceptions. So if you wanted to go for the exception, I'm going to be showing you that right now. So as you can see, this is quite pixelated. So if you want to, you can add one more subdivision to this. Just a word of caution. When you bake this as the last step before your final render, because bakes are not malleable. You're going to have to rebake it if you change it. And these textures we have to adjust to get rid of this jaggedness unless your computer is like super fast. So I'm going to be using subdivision of 3, or yeah, I think 3. 3 should do the job. And I'm going to be baking it. So let's go for dynamic paint. This will be our canvas. I'm going to be using image sequence. 256 is a little bit small. Go for 500. Only going to be doing 250 frames in this case. We have to get it to dissolve, and it has to dissolve immediately because we want a very sharp look. We're going to be, oh goodness, have to unwrap it. My bad. Let's just hit that. Z. Ooh, okay. Let's just unwrap this. Project from view bounds. Almost slipped up on that. We're only going to be using the wet map. Let's call that ripples advanced. Okay. That is wonderful. You almost don't have to change anything. The only thing that you do need to change is you do need to give your ocean thickness. If you don't, you only paint a little bit of a crease, and you don't want a crease. You want a solid division between the black and the white areas so that you can make some transparent and some not. So add a solidify modifier. Has to go downward. There we go. Just to cover that. There we go, just to get that away. Nice and thick. Remember, the shrink wrap still applies, so that's why you have to make it nice and thick. That is wonderful. Now, this is not supposed to render, just a caution. That's wonderful, and this will be our brush. Now remember, something about the dynamic paint is you can have a canvas and a brush at the same time on the same object. Let me show you. See? I initially thought that you can't. So just a heads up. You definitely can. So you're going to be using mesh volume as your paintbrush, not proximity. And we're happy with that. We're not using waves anyway, so it doesn't matter. So that's wonderful. Now we can bake it. So we're going to bake the image sequence, and then I'm going to switch to the different project and show you how to process it. Now this project I called Puddle because that's essentially what they look like. This is all that it takes is an alpha texture just to remove the alpha channel and make it white because we want the black areas. Just a little bit of a blur. As you can see, it's a proper blur to get rid of those, for lack of a better term, polygon pixelated type feel. And then we sharpen it up using a color ramp, and that goes into our composite and our final. So all you need to do is you load your sequence. Okay, like that. And this is what you see. Your original image will look something like this. You see what I mean by pixelation, polygon type look? It's horrendous. Almost looked like the face there. There too. Scary face. Anyway, so let's get rid of that. And this is our final result. Just going to show you what it looks like. See? You can adjust it, but the value that I use is 0.341. The way I found this value was by using a mix node and getting it as close to the original as possible. Like that. Look at that. See, it almost looks like JPEG noise. So that's the one I use. Getting rid of that. Okay. Now, if you want to, you can add a little bit of anti-aliasing to this. It's not necessary because there's a filter in Blender that causes interpolation to almost like smooth it out. It's like a form of anti-aliasing. So that I'm also going to be showing you. So after you've done this, well, I'm saying so a lot. After you've done this, you just render it out to a new folder. What I would suggest is putting it in the same folder under a folder named New. So in this case, I'm going to be doing that. Same folder, call it New. and save it there. Hit accept, save it, and render. Now back inside, all we need to do is add it to our object. So let's go new, leave it on image. Let's call this alpha. Open. There we go. As you can see, there it is. Now you do need to use the ramp. That's the word. Hey. Let's just make this black. There we go. I use 0.021 to make it as sharp as possible. Okay, under that you have to untick alpha, auto refresh, cyclic, or cyclic, however you want to say it. That's fine there. Image mapping is fine. Sampling. Here we go. This is the filter I was talking about. Remove MIP map. MIP map is usually, as far as I understand it, when you go far from an object, the textures reduce in resolution to save memory. That's what I believe that is, from my understanding. So interpolation is what you get when you have 2 pixels next to each other and they get faded in between each other. Now the filter size is what you have to set to 3 and set that to be your minimum filter size if you want them to add a sense of smoothness to the edges. That's wonderful. I'm going to use alpha. It's already bright and colored. We just need to make our material transparent. So let's get some refreshment on that. And calculate. Calculate's very important. Otherwise, it's not going to work. See? Material. Without calculate alpha, it's just, yeah, don't go there. So now you can see that it moves in there. Awesome. So let me quickly give you a render. Just get rid of the smooth light. Reposition this one after removing the constraint. Okay, get rid of the solidify modifier and turn off dynamic paint. For some reason it does affect the render, or it did affect the render in my tests. I've only been testing this since yesterday, so it could be that I was missing something. That looks cool. And let's just get rid of some of these weird layers like that. We want the whole thing, and we don't want any compositing turned on at the moment. That's fine. Just making sure everything runs as fast as possible. And this has to be running at 30 frames per second. So let's check that out. Okay, we need to make the water transparent. So let's do that. Going to turn off specularity, make it like that. And let's call this foam. Let's give it the foam texture. Not going to add a lot, just a tad. 0.1. Now it has to be the ocean texture over there. Select our object and foam. Again, ramp, set it to constant and adjust it to where you are satisfied you've got enough. Something like that. And also set that to alpha. You can use color just to make the waves white, but then you have to adjust this color too. So I'm going to pick the watercolor. Let me show you if you keep it black. This is what happens. For some reason it colors it. I don't know why. If it's transparent, it's supposed to be transparent. It's not supposed to color it, but whatever. Just work with it. That's fine. And let's hit render. Nice and transparent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be rendering this out with a nice deep blue plane at the bottom, just so you can see that it moves nicely and it animates correctly. It may look a little bit pixelated because of the lack of subdivision, but you can always up that for your final render, just to make it a little bit more refined. So let's add that plane I was talking about. Make it a nice deep blue. No specularity. Make it darker. Let's make it shadeless so that it's nice and strong. Something like that. Nice and deep. Deep blue. Let's give this a little bit of ray tracing. 1.25. I want it to diminish as it goes into the water. Let's go 0.95. Yeah, 0.95 is good. And filter on 1. I think it's filter. It's supposed to be the one that simulates absorption. Yeah. That's the one. Okay, let's look at that. And stick one of the other monkeys in underwater so I can see what it looks like. I want to be able to see it though. So I want it to stick partially out of the water. I want to see how deep it goes so that I can adjust the glossiness accordingly. Okay, I can adjust the distortion to be 1.1, reduce the alpha to be 0.1, and the filter I can reduce to be 0.8. Okay, threshold going to be on 1 so that it ranges as fast as possible. Okay, again. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, now this is just one way of doing these ripples. I'm sure there are plenty of ways out there, but I really hope this has been a blessing to you. Check out the final render. Have a great one and God bless.